Then you tell them that the only thing they can do is Scientology.
Debbie Pine ruined Alex Bowerman. In a series of grueling interviews, she persuaded him to start The Bridge, a set of courses allegedly designed to clear a person of his problems.
I was taken for 3 interviews, starting about 10 o'clock at night, ending up at about 4 o'clock in the morning. And it was during this process that I was persuaded that this was the best course to take.
The Bridge costs more than £20,000. To pay for it, Alex was persuaded to cash in an insurance policy, but he was told it had to be done immediately.
I'd spoken to the insurance company and been told that, there was no way they could get it that week. It would take 2-3 weeks minimum. So I went back to Scientology and they said, no, this is not correct. We've done this before. You just say that it's your money. If you want it, you can get it.
They were right. When Alex insisted he wanted the money quickly, the insurance company paid up. The senior registrar, Stephanie Powell, went with him to collect the money. But even though Alex handed over more than £23,000, she still wasn't satisfied. Within days, he'd been persuaded he needed more training courses, tapes and books, amounting to another £2,000.
They played me for a puppet. They managed, within the space of a week, to get £25,000 off me. That's more than my banks have ever managed to do in 25 years.
Alex's story is not unique. According to Andrea, it happens all the time.
People were persuaded to remortgage their homes, sell their homes, cash in the policies that were supposed to pay off their mortgages, borrow against their pensions, sell their family jewels, borrow from their families, sell their cars. Anything you can possibly imagine that a person could do to raise money, people were persuaded to do to pay into Scientology.
You can talk to thousands of people and they will tell you that nothing even remotely similar to that happened to them. It's just a story that is made up now to sound sensational and give you some fodder for your program that will make the church in some way look bad.
If targets had no ready cash or property to sell, they'd be persuaded to take out a loan. To make borrowing easy, the registrars kept a handy stock of forms from all the major financial lending institutions. They then persuaded people to lie to the bank about the purpose of the loans. This constitutes criminal deception.
Trust.
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 I knew full well, and so did all the other registrars, that if a person filled a loan form in saying the money was for Scientology, they'd get a very negative response. So people were encouraged to say that the money was for a management training course, a computer, a car, a boat, anything other than for Scientology. Sometimes the person would fill the form in themselves, sometimes we'd fill it in with them or for them. Then they'd sign it and it would be submitted to the bank on a completely false basis.
If the church itself assisted a member Scientologist in deceiving a bank into advancing a loan which the bank would not or might not otherwise have given, then that is conspiracy to cheat, and that's an extremely serious criminal offence.
In 1993, a loan application purporting to be for a computer was filled out by a young recruit in the Bournemouth mission.
The bank found out that he'd used the money for Scientology and threatened to go to the police. The mission needed a scapegoat. I was the scapegoat. I was told to write a report of all the things that had happened in the mission financially that were irregular.
Andrea says she was forced into signing a full confession, taking all the blame herself, even though other people were also involved in the financial scams.
I can't give you any information whatsoever about that. I just don't... You know, you're talking to me and I have certain information about things, but the Bournemouth mission is a long, long, long way away from the central activities of the Church of Scientology on an international basis.
Andrea was suspended for 6 months, but then she was reinstated. Back in her old apartment, it was business as usual. She was so successful, she even won awards from head office.
Trust.
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 It wasn't just the banks that Scientology officials defrauded. In the early 90s, the cult's accountants realised the mission had failed to register for value-added tax and owed thousands of pounds to Customs and Excise. This resulted in some creative bookkeeping. The scam was simple. The courses the cult sells are subject to VAT, but donations are not.
If there was a receipt for a course of, say, about £4,000, part of that she tax, which has to be deducted. But then the receipt would be changed, that receipt taken out and destroyed, another receipt made, and make it into a donation.
In the event that the church is deliberately falsifying its accounting records, destroying receipts and the like, so that its trading income or income from services is understated to the customs and excise, then that is an extremely serious criminal offence. It could be theft, false accounting, and could be subject to many years of imprisonment.
You know, I will say this to you over and over and over. If someone was doing something unethical, then that isn't tolerated by anybody in the church. That's not acceptable to me. It's not acceptable to anybody, and we take responsibility for straightening those things out.
Trust.
Trust.
Scientology staff, under constant pressure to make money, live in fear of any of their recruits leaving the cult. A recruit who drops out represents a drop in income. Even worse, he might demand a refund. So officials need to keep all members under their control, and to do this they use an insidious technique. All recruits are persuaded to divulge any dark secrets from their past for their own good. Those secrets are recorded and can, if necessary, be used against them in the future. Stuart Parkinson is one of the mission's most senior officials. One day he took Alex Bowerman aside for a confidential chat. He told him that to get over his problems he should admit all his past wrongdoings.
There was a sort of confessional. Stuart asked for all sorts of information about my background, and anything that I was upset about or embarrassed about or I felt was holding me on the line. And I divulged all sorts of stuff that I would not normally tell anybody. In fact, stuff that I've not told anybody up until that point. Having written them all down, he read them and they went in my file.
That confession was to have serious consequences for Alex. After he left the cult, he was pestered for 6 months with letters and calls. Then they discovered he'd instructed a solicitor to take legal action to get his money back.
Within the next couple of days, we had a letter from the mission that was not very pleasant.
The letter referred to the secrets that Alex had divulged, suggesting the way out for you could be to honestly confess everything you did to your wife and the police and suffer the consequences.
It was basically telling me that they had stuff on me that I wouldn't want other people to know about.
Then Hodkin and Company, Scientology solicitors, passed on the letter to the Legal Aid Board in an attempt to forestall Alex's legal action.
I was devastated. Just reading that letter, I felt as if the whole world had sort of collapsed in one go.
Fear that personal confidences might be divulged by the Scientologists can ruin a life, or even end it. Last November, Richard from Christchurch was recruited into the Bournemouth mission. Within a few months, he'd borrowed £3,000 to pay for Scientology courses. Richard's sister, Jennifer, lives in Australia. She remembers what her brother was like before he met the Scientologists.
I would describe him as a very thoughtful, caring, intelligent, sensitive person. He seemed to enjoy life. He went out a lot with his friends.
Richard underwent the Scientologists' purification rundown. Supposedly a form of detoxification, recruits take huge doses of vitamins and then go for a vigorous half-hour run. They then sit in a sauna for up to 5 hours a day. This punishing regime is repeated daily for at least 2 to 3 weeks. People start to hallucinate, allegedly because their bodies are getting rid of impurities. In fact, it's a symptom of the damage being done to the metabolism. It was all too much for Richard, both physically and mentally. Alan, one of Richard's workmates, witnessed what happened when he decided to quit Scientology.
When he initially wanted to leave, they phoned him 4 times a day, 5 times a day, for an hour each time on the phone. And while he was on the phone, he was shaking, he was a bit nervous, obviously frightened or something, but only the Scientologists and Rich would know what that conversation was.
Tony Clark and other Bournemouth